Hello Steelers, and welcome to this review of Somme Success by the historian Peter Hart. This is actually quite an old book, but I just read it recently. I couldn't actually remember if I'd reread it. I think I'd read it a few years ago, but I certainly reread it recently while I was away on holiday, so I thought I'd do a book review about it because it is a very good book for people who are interested in the First World War, air war in particular. It's called Somme Success because the subtitle is The Royal Flying Corps and the Battle of the Somme, 1916. The copy that I have here is a pen and sword reprint of, I think it is, let me just check, I think it was originally published by Leo Cooper. That was back in 2001. This is a 2012 version of it. There may be a later reprint. This is currently selling, or at least the price on the back of this one is £12.99. So it's quite an old book, but Pen and Sword will most likely have copies of it, so you can pick it up from there quite easily, I would have thought. That said, you probably get copies, second-hand copies, or wherever on Amazon. Now, it's basically based around the Battle of the Somme, 1916, from July through to November of 1916. However, there is quite a lot of preamble beforehand talking about the development of the aircraft and the air war in particular in the First World War, which is very interesting if you know very little about it. The aircraft went to war in 1914 unarmed, basically as an observation aircraft for ground liaison with troops, to be able to, to spot enemy manoeuvres or enemy batteries and things like that, and then very quickly developed into a fighting machine, not only a scout machine but also bombers as well, and also observation aircraft, which finally became the mainstay of the air war in the First World War. A lot of people think about the aces, like the Red Baron and Werner Voss, Albert Ball, those kind of people. They think about those when they think of the air war, but the real backbone of the air war was about observation, was about artillery observation in particular, not only spotting artillery batteries, enemy artillery batteries, but also drawing fire on them as well, and also aerial photography as well for working out enemy positions and things. So this is really where it all came into its own, and it really came together during the Battle of the Somme. Prior to the Somme, the air war was pretty desultory. It wasn't particularly well organised in particular, and it's only really when the build-up for the large push in 1916 started, and this is what this book covers. So we start off with, as I say, a brief introduction to the air war in the First World War, how it develops, some of the early flyers, some of the names and things, but then also really gets into the bones of what the Royal Flying Corps in particular were doing. It also looks at it from the German point of view as well, talking about some of the German aces when they start to develop the interrupter gear after Roland Garros was shot down, and then Anthony Fokker developed the interrupter gear, which fires the machine gun through the arc of the propeller. So basically it stopped firing every time the propeller blade was in front of it, and then we get the Fokker Scourge as well of late 1915 through to 16. And then it's also really points to the development of the different aircraft as well throughout the period. The British were really reliant on the BE-2C, which was pretty much outdated before it even took off, and they just soldiered on with it. It was a stable machine, it was good for observation. However, it really suffered at the hands of the Fokker Eindeckers. They just cut it to pieces. But then there was the development of things like the DH-2 and the FE-2Bs, these other aircraft as well, which really then gave the RFC the upper hand. And it goes into great detail in this book telling you about how the RFC managed to take air supremacy to its edge and really push the Germans back over their lines almost. There was very few German patrols during the Battle of the Somme over the British lines because the British just outclassed them with their aircraft, and they also outclassed them as well with the number, so they outnumbered them as well with the number of aircraft that they were using during the Somme. And it was a real combined arms situation where the aircraft were being used for contract patrols to see how far forward the infantry were getting. They were also, supporting them with bombing raids and ground strafing, and as I say, the artillery missions as well. And all of this is covered in this book. It's a really for what is quite a short book. It's pretty in depth historically. Peter worked as the oral historian at the Imperial War Museum from about 1982 until relatively recently. So he was, he's got 40 years of historical expertise under his belt with dealing with people with memories and memoirs, and with interviews with veterans and things. This one is largely taken a lot from people's diaries, as well as the Imperial War Museum's collections as well, because a lot of the life of a lot of aviators was quite short. So there's people like Albert Ball, who was killed in 17. There's people like Lano Hawker, who was killed in 16. You've got snippets from Bolecker, and also from Immelman himself, and from the Red Baron as well, as they were all developing their careers. And obviously a lot of their stuff has to come from somewhere else, because they weren't alive at the end of the war, all of these people. So he's drawn quite a lot from other sources, as well as the Imperial War Museum's oral collection and tabulated collection as well of their oral history. So it's quite widespread across the entire Somme front. Both British and German flyers as well are included in this, so it gives you a really good rounded idea of the air war itself, and how it was fought, how it developed, and basically how the RFC were supreme until really the development of the next generation of the German fighters after the Eindeckers. So this was like the Albatross and things like that, and then they started again to get the upper hand, which is because their aircraft were so much better. But it was an arms race. The British then developed better weapons as well to combat those, and vice versa. It just kept happening. This is the way that the war developed, and the air war in particular. It's interesting to see how primitive in 1914 the air war was, and then even by the end of 1916 how sophisticated it had become, and how even more, it gets even more sophisticated in 1917 and 18. Peter has also got books on those. They're worth checking out. Bloody April covers 1917, and then also Aces Falling covers 1918 as well. So you could say that this is part of a trilogy of that. There is also The Tumult in the Clouds as well, which he wrote, I think, with Nigel Cave, and that again covers the air war as well. All four of those books are well worth buying. This is a great introduction. It's a small one, and it will probably give you a very different view on the fighting on the Somme as well, if you've never read anything about the First World War, and in particular the air war as well. Very, very much recommended. As I say, check it out. You'll probably get a copy of it through Pen and Sword. Probably be able to find it on Amazon, other places as well, other sellers, I am fairly sure. And thoroughly recommended from me, who is very interested in First World War aircraft and air fighting.